I guess you can greet on
Okay,
part of the museum.
I can
greet
greet
on this.
everybody.
Yeah, so-
Well, I would like to greet everybody. I'm George Bozarth, and this is Tamara Friedman.
Hello.
And we are the co-curators of this family of instruments. When you get all their lids up, it looks like a fleet that's about to sail away, doesn't it? It really has that Northwest flavor. And I see that Tamara has nicely backlit the portraits that we have of some of the builders. Mr. Stein on the right has his piano upstairs. The next one over is Anton Walter, and if you can see him, he looks like a very grumpy man. Either that or his false teeth are not in or something. But we borrowing the old Purdue slogan, we say it takes a tough man to make a tender piano. And this is the Anton Walter piano that you'll hear today, right in front of us. And then the other one is Conrad Graf, and he is one of the builders whose pianos were used as models for the piano at the far end, which you'll hear today. And that piano is a mixture of elements from Bösendorfer's earliest pianos and from Conrad Graf's pianos, built by Regier, who decided he knew how to solve the problems that they had. And so that's our Conrad Graf Bösendorfer. It's known amongst the cognoscenti as a Grafendorfer. Okay? And we're not hearing the net, are we, over here today? The net didn't get tuned.
We didn't, yeah, Nanette did not get tuned.
Okay. Nanette Streicher was the premier woman piano builder, and she was the daughter of Stein, who you see over there. And Nanette's picture is somewhere.
It's right up there, she's on the far left.
Nanette's picture's on the far left.
She's being obscured by the lid.
And she, when people came to visit her husband, who for years got credit as being the piano builder, he was running the front office. And then they'd say, well, where's Nanette? And she'd come out wearing a patchwork quilt dress, which she'd put together, covered in sawdust. Because she was out there making pianos like her dad taught her to do. So she and her workmen were the actual builders of the pianos, and he was the front office and the piano teacher in Vienna. They were friends of Beethoven's, and very good friends. She helped him with his household, including doing his wash for him for a stretch of time. So it's nice to know that she kept him in clean socks, because he probably wouldn't even have worn them, right? Okay, so I just want to say a couple things about the collection in general, and I've written all this down, okay, on your handout. And so that when you want to, you can go back and look at it. You don't have to take notes. There's no test at the end of this, okay? But you'll have all this material of 8 pages and illustrations and pictures. And the pianos in this collection are all straight strung.
There are more of those handouts.
And if you look at the picture on the first page, you can see a straight strung piano on the left and a cross strung piano on the right. We need some more handouts, Tamara.
She's off for him.
You have?
She's getting them.
You're getting them? Okay.
Okay, anyone else need one?
Take it.
You have one?
And if you turn to the next page, you can see an earlier piano which is straight strung, and you notice it has no bracing in it. And when you're looking in our early pianos, they're all wooden pianos with no metal bracing in it. The frame and the bracing work underneath the piano hold it in position. They do tend to go out of tune though more because of that. Metal bracing really got going with Chickering in Boston, and I'm sure it was because of the lousy weather that threw pianos out of tune all the time. And it first came into square pianos like this to brace them, to keep them in tune. And then eventually came into grand pianos. They were afraid that metal bracing would ruin the tone of the piano. That's what they were afraid, and nobody wanted to put the cost that it would be into running the experiments. Chickering did, and he cornered the market on American pianos until Steinway came along. So they're all straight strung, and most of them are all wooden. Okay? We like straight strung pianos because the parallel strings give you a different tonal quality wherever you are on the piano. And so if you're playing Bach and you've got a middle voice and you're trying to play it with your second finger and thumbs, or as Brahms called it, his tenor thumbs, you're trying to bring out that voice on the modern piano, you have to do it with dynamics. On a colorful piano like these, it just comes out because it's a different color. It sounds like a tenor coming in under the alto. And we just love that coloristic difference. The most colorful piano is the square piano over here by Broadwood. It's the wild boy of it's the Jerry Lee Lewis of who just died in '87. I was listening to Great Balls of Fire this morning. Brought back my youth. This is the wildest and woolliest piano, and that is tuned today, so you'll get to hear that. We'll talk a little bit about these pianos. Tamara will talk about them. She's going to give you a performance of a full movement. Are you on each piano, or
No.
large sections? Large sections. Before we get to the piano, before we get to the pianos, though,
If I get
we
inspired.
have two instruments that came before, and that is clavichords. Clavichords are very ancient instruments. When's the earliest clavichords?
13th century.
13th century? There you go. And then this is a harpsichord that originally would have had gut strings in it. Sheep gut. Don't worry about your cat, okay? Sheep gut. But this one has fluorocarbon strings. And a lot of experimentation went into until he found strings, fluorocarbon strings, that sounded like the gut strings that he originally had on it. And that stays in tune. That door blew open, was open all night one day this week, and the piano was still in tune the next morning. Nothing else was, but that one was. So those are the first instruments, and a Lautenwerk has one keyboard, but it has stops that allow you to get different sounds. Tamara, do you want to talk about the stops?
Okay.
I'd rather you talk about it. You're going to need a stool, though.
Yeah.
And you want to start with the Lautenwerk, or do you want to start with the clavichord?
Well, maybe we should start with the clavichord just because it's the softest.
I
of all
think you
the
could take your
instruments?
mask off here.
I'm worried that if we start
Yes.
with anything louder than the clavichord will sound impossibly soft.
Should we turn the lights out for the clavichord?
No, that's so funny.
The clavichord sounds louder when there's no lights in the room. It does, because your senses are not distracted by anything. It all focuses on the clavichord. And this is probably too big of a room for a clavichord.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Cut the room off about where the window
It
is, about where I am.
It's really good for about 3 people who are standing where I am. That's what it's really meant for. In fact, it's really just meant for the person playing. It's not.
Would
really
you like to invite people to stand
meant as a-
closer?
Well, if you'd like to, I'd be
If you'd
happy
like
to
to
have you
move
stand
up.
closer. Yeah, if you feel like you just
Maybe
can't
we
hear
can.
it, which is a possibility. So I will play on the clavichord now part of an early Haydn sonata, which very well may have been composed on the clavichord and written with the clavichord in mind. It was one of Haydn's favorite instruments, and
It was the perfect instrument for renters of rooms, which
And
is what
yes.
Haydn was.
And he was also, an ardent devotee of C.P.E. Bach, for whom this instrument was, sort of the be-all, end-all. He was the one that really popularized it as the expressive instrument above all others. And part of this is because it's not a keyboard like a piano. Once you hit the key, it's not all over with. You have to keep exerting pressure on that key, or think of it. David Calhoun, who tutored me on this, said, pretend you're playing a flute and you have to keep the air going. So superficially, this is the easiest of the keyboard instruments to put the keys down. Anton. Hello, welcome.
Come in quickly.
But if you really play it, you have to really go down, and then if you want to vibrato on it, which you can do, you go down even a little bit more, and you go up and down, or you go side to side.
You
To
can
get the
try
kind
that
of
with your
vibrato.
finger on your knee.
Molly!
Vibrato,
Very nice
vibrato.
to see you. Hi.
It's the
Thank
only
you all
keyboard
for
instrument
coming.
you can get vibrato.
Sorry,
You
we're
see
late.
pianists
That's
on
okay.
TV shaking their fingers on the modern
It's
Broadway
no
and
worries.
they're feeling it, but nothing
So
happens.
great to see you.
So what is the mechanism?
What is, the mechanism is a seesaw.
You can see it. All
bottom
it
of
is what
page
you see
3.
here. It's just the key, and the key has a little wedgy piece on the end that pushes up on the string when you push the key down. That's all there is to it. So it's so elemental, you almost feel like you're playing a string instrument instead of a keyboard, because you're in such direct contact.
And when you let
Strings.
your finger off the key, the string drops down on felt, and that damps it. So there's no separate damping mechanism. It's working. Yeah, I'm afraid that some of you toward the back won't be able to hear it. We have a nice seat. We have a nice seat up here. If somebody wants to go closer,
yes. In fact, there's 2 seats here.
and somebody can
We
sit
don't need to
here.
have these taking up a seat.
And Tamara,
Yes.
why don't you turn this chair around with its back toward the table?
Oh, yes.
Because you're not going to be using the harpsichord. No, toward that little table,
Oh,
over in that
okay.
niche.
Okay.
So, come
Anybody,
on up if you want to be near.
first timers particularly, come up.
This is the first movement of this. It's very unusual, but it starts with a slow movement. It's called a Siciliana. It's not actually called a Siciliana. It just is a Siciliana. He doesn't call it that. But it's adagio, and it's a very sort of soulful, somewhat sorrowful piece, which gives way to a contra dance or a country dance, which is exactly the opposite. It's not only happy and it's kind of goofy. I think you'll enjoy it after the pathos of the first movement.
notice how it got louder the longer you listened to it? The auditory nerves adapt. And this is the most soulful little instrument. I mean, and I found that playing on this, if I got a piece the way I wanted it on this, it just transferred beautifully to a fortepiano. If I started on the fortepiano, it was harder to get what I wanted. But this tamed down my motions, it focused me, and it's just a beautiful instrument.
The treatises of the time say that a good clavicordist will always make a good harpsichordist, but not necessarily the other way around.
And this was C.P. Bach's favorite instrument. His treatise on keyboard playing is focused on clavichord. He mentions the other instruments, but it is clavichord. And as Tamara said, Haydn's keyboard instrument, go-to instrument, was the clavichord. And there's even an account of him working on
The creation.
the creation
He composed the whole creation on the clavichord.
on an instrument like this.
And, you know, he was really poor, so he couldn't.
Well, he was not
afford
poor
anything.
by that point.
No, but early on he was,
Yeah.
so this was his
Yeah.
preferred instrument. Should we move on, or should I do one more thing?
Let's move on.
Okay,
Can I ask a question?
yes.
Just quickly about the vibrato in the left hand that you're doing. How does that work on the clavichord?
You shake the string.
You
Okay, so-
basically
all
you're
right,
mov-
basically you're
you're moving the string sort of up and
Okay,
down.
okay.
Yeah.
The Germans call it Bebung,
yeah.
quaking.
But it's very tricky because it doesn't take much. You can also do pitch bending on this.
Oh yeah.
Like
Like
a blues singer, you know, and the problem is that when you try to do vibrato, sometimes you end up bending the pitch. So it's a very fine tolerance.
Could you take a second and demonstrate that?
So, just with the first note of the.
Uh-huh.
So if I really push down as. So if I want to vibrato, I vibratoed on that, but I didn't push too hard.
Okay. Thanks.
Do a vibrato lower down, where it can a little louder.
There's actually two different ways to vibrato. There's up and down. You see two different types described: up and down and side to side. And so, you know, you just have to kind of see
Just like earthquakes. Very Bebung.
which one you like better for which occasion.
So,
Shall we move to the
other
Lautenwerk?
questions, please. We've got a captive clavichord here. Ask your question.
So there are no feet, there are no pedals.
No pedals on
No
this.
pedals,
No.
no. Just
And
as
how-
long,
Nowhere to hide.
as long as you hold the string, it'll keep trying to vibrate. The sound will die away pretty quickly, but
How many octaves? It looks like maybe 3.
It's 5 octaves. Everything Mozart and Haydn ever wrote fits on this, which is amazing, really.
So
It's-
are the keys smaller?
they're a little narrower. Yeah.
and you notice the color is reversed.
Yeah.
That's the Austrian
But that's
way.
like the
The
least of your
German way.
problems. It's not. Nope. You get used to that really quickly.
So was that the standard width for keys for a long time?
Yes.
Oh, except that I think that you can actually find keyboard instruments from all eras with different. Because remember the clavichord we have in Maine, its keys are.
Well, that's a
Where-
replica that whoever made the kit didn't realize that the keys should be narrower.
Well,
I didn't think to ask before I bought it.
but yeah, in general,
Yeah.
the octave is smaller on the earlier instruments,
So it's
but
good
not
for-
always.
It's good for people with small hands.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Lautenwerk. George, would you like to talk about the Lautenwerk?
This was built by Stephen Sørl in Amherst, Massachusetts. And we saw online that he had it, and we were on the East Coast and went to see it and just fell in love with it. And it's a harpsichord, so it's got stops on it. The strings are plucked, and the stops determine which string is being plucked and where. So we call the long strings 8-foot strings. You can see they're not, but that's like organ terminology. 8-foot strings and 4-foot strings.
Excuse me, I was trying to signal to Valerie to tell her that there's a chair here.
Oh yeah, there's a
Well, we can just take
Chair
those
here, there's
cushions
a
off
chair
that chair there. Yeah, nobody should need to not have a place to sit.
no.
There's also a seat here too, and one there temporarily.
So the 8-foot string actually is set up so that it can be plucked here or here. Depending on where it was plucked, you get a different color out of it. And it can also be set up where you couple them and they both pluck it, so you get a louder sound. The 4-foot string can either be off or it can be on, and that's an octave higher than the 8-foot. Can you demonstrate the 4-foot string?
Well, here, okay, so I'll first demonstrate something.
No,
Normal.
just playing a couple notes.
Well, it's
Okay.
better if I do the
Okay.
comparison. So this is
Do it.
normal, one of the 8-foot stuff. So. And now we'll put the 4 on. Wait a minute. Sorry.
A different 8-foot. Now you're on the 4-foot. Turn the 4-foot off and play it with everything off.
Oh, with everything off, right.
You gotta have a stop on. So put one of the left one's 8-foots on. Switch them. Put them both on. Richer sound. Add the 4-foot to it. Have the gold on top. Who's the composer?
That's Bach. That's from the first partita. So now I'm going to start, we're going to play a little bit of the first movement of the D major partita, and we'll start with everything on, and then at various points, I wouldn't do this in a performance, mostly I wouldn't stop midway to switch stops, but just for comparison's sake, I'll first start with everything on, then I will switch to leaving the 4-foot on and have one of the 8-foots on, and then I'll switch to the other 8-foot. And then I'll turn the 4-foot off and put one of the 8-foots on to continue.
Phone
You
machine.
haven't
Starting-
told us about the strings.
Starting with
The
everything.
what?
You haven't told us about the strings.
The strings
Oh!
originally were gut strings, sheep gut. Stephen Sørl built his prototype instrument and put sheep gut strings on it and got the sound that he wanted. And then he went looking for something that would be more practical than sheep gut strings and more stable. And he came up, after experimenting with a lot of things, he came up with a type of fluorocarbon string that he uses. And that's what you're hearing, and you can hear it sounds lute-like, which is what a Lautenwerk is. It's a keyboarded lute. I should mention also that Bach was very interested in this instrument and helped to develop it. And you'll see the quotes in your packet. Somebody, one of his students, told the story of how Bach worked on this in the 1740s. There are no original instruments, no original Lautenwerk that survived. There are some drawings, there are descriptions, and it says in the description of Bach that it was a harpsichord-shaped instrument. So Sørl started with that, a harpsichord-shaped instrument, and then went on. There's nothing that says exactly how long it should be or how wide it should be or anything like that. So he was a very creative chap. You can still buy these from him. He'll build them for you. He specializes in all sorts of strange keyboard instruments. He has one that is a harp shape. The strings go up from the back of the keyboard, and there's no sounding board or anything. It's just plucking the strings, and that's his harp keyboard.
Doesn't he
Harp
have
harpsichord.
didn't he make one with it actually looks like a giant lute?
No, he didn't do that. There's a gentleman in Eastern Europe who built one. It's about that big around the body of the thing, and it's in the shape of a lute. It has a barrel bottom, round bottom, and it's got all the separate pieces of wood and everything, and then fitted out with a keyboard. That makes a huge sound because of all the body work on it. There's no evidence that Bach was ever involved in such an instrument.
So what is the mechanism of this one?
Same as a harpsichord.
Yep.
The same as a harpsichord. It plucks.
Yes,
But
it's plucking.
is it, am I correct, Tamara, that there are no dampers, so it just keeps.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
Unlike the harpsichord where
Right.
you let go of
Oh, yes.
The
Right,
sound
right.
doesn't last all that long. It doesn't need dampers. And having the sounds going on enriches.
Wait a minute, I think it does up to
Yeah.
a certain point. It does up to C. It's only starting with middle C, it doesn't have them.
Oh,
Yeah.
Go on up from there.
Yeah.
The melody would sing
Yeah.
out and the
Yes.
bass is
Uh-huh.
more.
Right.
Thanks for asking that
Yes.
question.
Thank you.
That didn't make it into the packet. I gotta add that in now.
Okay, so starting with everything on for a French overture, which, as you probably already know, was a piece designed to usher royalty and actors and important people into the theater before the event started.
Here comes the king with dotted rhythms.
I just changed sounds. I'm gonna change.
You see why we like straight strung instruments? All the counterpoints just popping out at you. Where are we going next? Are we going to England or to Vienna?
Let's go to England.
England.
Yeah.
Okay, you need to turn to about page 7, or maybe even 8 on your packet. Look on the back of the packet. Do you see Broadwood Square listed?
Yes, it is. Page 7.
Page 7.
Midway.
Yes, mid-page on 7. So, you're gonna need to get your camera swung around. And we're gonna let you sit where she was sitting.
You're going to stay here?
Yes.
I won't play
You're
with the
okay
bottom.
You're okay.
You're fine.
You're in the best spot.
Yeah.
You are.
While you're preparing, these fluorocarbon strings.
Pardon me?
You talked about the fluorocarbon strings.
Fluorocarbon strings, yes.
Yes. Do you think I could use it for my gamba?
I don't know.
I'm not
I
sure.
don't know.
I'm not sure
Because
that-
I have
Any-
gut strings, and
Yeah.
every morning I come in there
Oh, I
out of
know,
tune.
every 5 minutes they have.
What do you think?
I
And there are 6 strings on that thing.
Wow.
There's an opinion right here.
We have an
What-
opinion.
Some of those, very often with like the nylon strings and so forth, they won't bow. Maybe rosin won't take to it. You can't get them bow.
Oh, they
Now-
pluck but they don't bow is,
Right,
Right.
so, but the fluorocarbon, I have not followed up on it, they've been really experimenting more, and they may have textured it enough so it can. So you might try checking if there aren't, if it's suitable. But a lot of the synthetics, they try for the Nile gut and these things, you can't bow them. So, but it's worth a check.
they
because
need that little bit of
texture to be able to.
texture coming out of the,
With a rosin,
of
to
the-
make that.
of the
That's a pity.
tanned gut.
How much I would like to have some strings that stay
Tamara,
Yeah.
strong.
I should be over there to,
You do, you need to come over here. You need to be my swell.
I'm her swell.
My Venetian swell.
Could you, Dorothy, could you change chairs with me?
You'll do anything you ask.
Be careful what you say around here.
And Tamara, will you move that chair back into that gap for me?
Am I in your way?
No,
No,
you're
you're
fine.
not, Molly.
Okay.
Never.
Good to see
How's the
you.
little Chickering?
Fine.
Yeah?
You need it back?
No. We're-
We enjoyed having it, we really did.
Well, we might be able to find a place for it.
If you want to have it here, I'll bring it.
Okay, good, we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
Where's that chair? Okay.
So is this in the way now of the camera?
It's fine.
Let's get that out of the way.
I'll just put it over here and I'll move
There
back
you
when you
go.
need it. How's that?
Perfect, perfect. So this has a flip thing here.
Oh.
And some of these pianos had pedals that raised and lowered it. And it was known as a swell. This doesn't have that piano, so I'm the swell,
The swell mechanism.
okay? And I will let little changes in dynamics come out as she's playing Bach. But she's going. Do you want to play something with it just closed
Yeah, I'm gonna
first?
start with it completely closed up, just to demonstrate. This piano is such a chameleon. I'm gonna start with a piece from Jane Austen's musical notebook, and she had a piano just like this, pretty much, and she loved to play with it closed because she didn't like to bother anybody when she played in the mornings. So this is from her music book, and it's just a very sweet little innocent piece. I don't remember what it's called. Oh, one thing I should say about this instrument, you have to really be very down-striking with this, almost a bit more like a harpsichord. If you simply try to caress the key the way you do on a piano, this is what happens. You just don't get any sound. So you really have to put the key down.
This
So
is
if some of the keys seem to be missing, that's what's going on. I'm not being down-striking.
the mechanism in this is that an intervening rod pushes the hammer up to hit. And so it needs that little bit of oomph to get it. It's called a bump mechanism, and I'm trying to think the German, what they call it. The Stoffmechanik, is that?
Yeah.
I can't remember, I'm losing that, but anyway, the English did this type of bump mechanism, and that went on through the pianos along the wall on this side and around to the end, and that's what a modern Steinway mechanism is based on that. The Viennese is a flip mechanism, and we could go over to the Viennese. We'll look at those diagrams in your packet, and you'll be able to see those differences. But let's just hear some music. And I'm sorry, Brahms has got his back to you. Did you say hello to Brahms as you came in? Where on earth did we get that? Right, the ends of the earth. You hear how different the color is between the right and left hand. To me, it's like a lyrical young girl singing an aria with her bow supporting it, with some sort of a bass instrument down below. It's just, and very colorful sound. You still want to keep this down, or are we
No,
going
now
to
you
Bob?
can be my swell.
Okay, so you'll all know this piece. Volume and also color changes, doesn't it? Okay.
And if we want to be a little more,
Are you going to play a piece with just it open all
yeah,
the time?
no, it will.
Yeah.
But first, we'll try something with just partly open,
Right.
something extroverted but not wildly extroverted.
Yes. Who is that?
That's fine.
That's Haydn. And you see the jokester in that? And you hear how much the joke, you do that on a modern piano and it's like a jokester in a tuxedo. You know, this is a jokester in its country outfits. Now the lid is up.
And if you want to do some dancing after dinner, you'd open your lid. You might do something like this. This is an instrument that was restored by Marinus from Prattenburg up in Vancouver, Surrey outside of Vancouver. And when we would visit him, we would see this instrument there and we'd play on it. We'd say, oh, we love that instrument. If you ever decide to sell it, call us and we'll buy it from you. And we just coveted it for probably, 6 or 8 years or something on visits. And finally he came down here and he said, you know, I want to get one of my cars restored. I'm working on it, and I'm willing to sell the Broadwood to get the money. And so we wrote him a check and said, bring it with you the next time you come down. And so that's how this joined the family. He did a splendid job on restoring it. He replaced the strings. The soundboard, as best we could tell, never had any cracks in it, nor the bridge. And
the dampers are these little things. Can play something so that maybe you can see the dampers hopping up and down. Play a little bit of piece.
Oh, yeah.
You see them? And they are wooden things with little felt underneath it. They were called dolly dampers because they look like little dolls hopping up and down. They were also called dish mop or something.
Mop head.
What was the other
Something-
one?
Mop head dampers.
Mop heads.
Mop head
dampers.
dampers, yeah. And that prototype of that was invented by an Irish builder called William Southwell, probably pronounced William Southwell. And he patented it in the 1790s, and everybody ignored the patent and started stealing it. And he ended up trying to take on Broadwood in a lawsuit, and they just had too much money to fight it. So he had to let the lawsuit drop, and then that basically nullified his patent, and everybody got to use it. And that is the basis of what's in a Steinway or a Yamaha or whatever. You look at those dampers that are coming up and down. They're on wires that come up from the ends of the keys. And so he invented the modern, Southwell invented the modern damper mechanism. And there's refinements, of course, that have been done to it since then. But the basic principle is his. So the Irish have something, if anybody's Irish in here, you have something to wear the green and be proud about. So what are you going to do next? You're going to do that Haydn Sonata?
Probably the last, yeah, a little bit of the last Haydn Sonata. And, this whole classical style is so, as we say, rhetorical, very speech-like, always, making an argument of some sort or examining things from a different angle. So this is a prime example of that, and also of some humorous effects as well. This actually starts off like a French overture, but quickly descends.
Degenerates into humor.
into
I might
comics.
also add that being the last of his sonatas, this was after he had encountered English instruments.
Oh yeah, he wrote this in response
Yeah.
to English instruments.
So he's writing this to show everything that these pianos can do, the grands or the squares. Yeah, get well armed for this. Did you hear a Did you hear a tune that you recognized?
Yeah,
What was it?
Three Blind Mice.
Absolutely. And did you notice what happens when the cat comes in? Play through that. The minor, it turns to minor. It's as if the cat shows up.
No.
Too literal.
Okay.
Maybe not for Haydn. He loved to put nationalistic things in his pieces. For the English audiences, he put things from Austria and dances and stuff. And going back to Vienna and playing his last sonata, he seems to have picked up Three Blind Mice while he was in
I'll play you a little bit of contra dance from one of his other sonatas.
Chaplinesque, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It's got all the pratfalls and everything of a good comedian actor.
But at the same time, you said that Jane Austen had an instrument like this.
Yes.
And I'm thinking of her book Persuasion, where the protagonist plays,
Mm-hmm.
and she plays country dances by the hour
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
for people to dance to.
Yeah.
And that's exactly.
Yeah.
Every year, publishers came out with the dances of 1820, the dances of 1821. And these usually were one large sheet of music with, you'd open up past the cover and there would be the dances.
This is the entertainment center.
Can you show them one of the dances just plain and then what you can add to it?
This is Mrs. Casey.
Mrs. Casey, she's a sad Irish lass. This is what's written in the music. Or maybe she likes to kick up her heels. Isn't that fun? And I'm sure that that's the basic things that you got in the music. I'm sure people added all sorts of things around it. You can hear other musicians what they would do. There you go. So Broadwood square pianos, and if you want to have a piano that's not going to take up a whole lot of room and you want an early keyboard instrument, you can still pick these up at pretty reasonable prices. And you got to be very careful that they're in good shape. But you could probably pick up one in good shape for $10,000 to $12,000, which is nothing when you're talking about pianos. And it just is endless delight. I can see why by the hour she played country dances. Exactly, that's it. So now you know what to have in your ear when you're reading that novel. This is in Persuasion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's some colonial keyboard tunes. Anybody wants to check that out? This Clementi is, it needs work, but it's, here, I'll play just a few notes on it, since I'm right here. Little Clementi, I'll play a little Clementi on it.
Muzio Clementi. delightful instrument as well. And that you're hearing it all closed up.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well,
that is-
no, it's actually got its,
You got one
yeah.
open there, but you got a
yeah,
picture over part of it too.
yeah.
That is Muzio Clementi near the end of his life, and he had bought rights to William Southwell's patent to be able to use it in his piano. And one of the things that Southwell invented was the sound vents that you see on either end of the keyboard. He called them sonovents,
Doesn't
obviously.
that sound modern?
Sonovents. And the design that he made was a sort of a takeoff of a royal crown. But whoever made this one didn't realize that, and they made it upside down.
It's upside down.
You have to look,
Oh, yes.
turn your head over, and then you can see the crown. They made it completely upside down. You can imagine the despair of Clementi when they saw it. But it was made, the hand painting may have been done on it, because they jobbed these things out and then put them together. And so they used it, you know. This is about 1807, this instrument. Where are we
Okay.
moving
I
now?
think we're ready to go to Vienna.
Let's go to Vienna. Okay. Anton Walter was one of the three master keyboard makers. The Schanzes, the brothers Schanz, was another firm, and Annette Streicher was the third firm. And they gave each other a run for their money. When Mozart came to Vienna, he needed to have a fortepiano. He wanted to compose not only operas, but piano concertos. Can you imagine being his dad and hearing, well, I'm going to go to Vienna and make a living composing operas and piano concertos? But you have to realize that the piano concertos are being written at the same time as operas. And so they're like instrumental operas in a lot of ways. And you can imagine certain characters even being in them. So Mozart, wanting to do piano concertos, wanted the loudest piano that he could get. And the Schanz's pianos were quieter and sweeter, and clavichord loving Haydn, he loved the Schanz pianos because they were that way. But Mozart wanted something that was going to carry over the orchestra. So this is the loud instrument that he bought one in 1785. This is about a decade later. It's the model that most people who build replicas of Walter pianos, they use this particular piano that was the model here. Regier lives in Freeport, Maine. Later on we'll hear the Grafendorfer down there that he built. And he has a climate-controlled workshop in the back, and he dries his own wood, and he cuts his own firewood, and he lives in an early 1800s farmhouse, and plants stuff in his field, and builds these beautiful pianos. So he is a real Mainer, and part of that wonderful tradition of Maine cabinet makers. And if you take a look at his two pianos, you'll realize how absolutely incredible precise his cabinet work is. This was his wife's piano for many years until he built her a new one, and he sold us the old one. So here we go. Tamara, you want to talk about playing the
I'm going to
instrument?
play you a few things from Mozart's early sonatas, which are not heard all that often, but they sound so wonderful on this piano. And first I'll start with the very first one, K279. These were the group that his family called his difficult sonatas. So I guess there were sonatas that we don't know about that were not quite as difficult. Okay, so let's start with some good old opera buffa.
permission to laugh?
Yes.
You're like modern audiences. On a Steinway, there's nothing to laugh about. On this piano, it's full of jokes, isn't it? Yuck, 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 yuck.
Okay,
It's
and-
just silliness, and this is, any of you who have read about Mozart's life, he had a very strong silly streak
Mm.
to him. Very strong
You
silly
probably
streak.
just couldn't see us smiling underneath our masks.
Good, but feel free to laugh, chuckle,
Um,
whatever.
Tamara,
Yes.
could you say something, are there knee levers or something?
Yes,
that
thank
you're-
you. There are two pedals here, which you can't really see, but one is a damper pedal for the right knee, and one is the una corda, or the moderator.
Moderator.
The moderator for the left knee. So I'm gonna start, I'll demonstrate the
Can
moderator.
you tell them what the moderator
The
how it
the
works?
moderator slides a little piece of felt between the hammer and the string, so that the string is being hit by the hammer through a piece of felt. That's what causes the.
And unlike on a modern piano, which has felt hammerheads, this has leather hammerheads, so it can punch through the little piece of felt that goes in. So it doesn't mean that you have to play everything quietly.
Right.
You can have it just a general thing where you have fluctuations of dynamics.
So I might use the moderator for a movement like this, which is from the second sonata, the Pastoral from the second sonata.
A little louder.
Could you play that without the knee?
And then if we wanted something a little bit more,
Could I say something about size?
yeah.
Mozart is filled with these two-note sides.
Oh, size.
And on a modern
I thought you meant
piano,
S-I-Z.
size.
S-I-G.
On a modern piano, you drop on that first note and you keep waiting for it to die away enough to go on to the second. It takes a long time to die away. This has just the right amount of time, we call it, it's a horrible word, decay. Decay is much faster, much faster on these early instruments. And so Mozart's sighs just come out naturally. You heard them all through that. Do you want to do a little more sighs?
Yeah. This is K282.
was a perfect, oh, sorry.
By the way, that's a drum bass. You missed it. We're in bagpipe land here.
That's the yellow. So you can imagine that he could write comic opera too. Yeah, at the same time. Do you need to move on now?
Yeah, I think we should have heard enough.
So this is Mozart's loud piano.
Yeah.
Where are we going next,
Is
Tamara?
this yours?
No.
Okay, that must be mine.
Where-
So these two were going on at the same time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you'll
Well,
see.
this is about 1820. That's about 1794.
But that's English and that's Viennese.
Right.
Yeah, you hear how
World
different
difference.
the sound aesthetic is. The people who liked the Viennese sound said that the English was too wet. And of course that really hurt. They said it was too wet. The sound didn't damp fast enough to do the tricks that they do. And the English said, oh, those Viennese dry pianos. You know, so it's like, it's like sweet and secco. Sweet and dry champagne or wine or whatever. It was just a matter of taste. And Haydn was the one who really bridged the gap between the two of them. He had an English piano back. After he was in England, he had one imported back into Austria to show his friends This very different type of instrument.
Yeah.
So we're going to Fritz next.
I guess Fritz is next.
Okay, everybody turn your chairs around.
Sort of looking for my list. I have a list of things. I have a little list.
I think maybe some people need some help getting their chairs turned around.
Oh.
Like Mary's mother.
Oh.
Do you want, Jackie, do you want to stand on? Okay.
And you're going to be kind of left out, which we can't have. Why don't you move over here and just move the chair up?
This one? There's
Yeah,
Barbara
and
sitting there.
just move it on up into a gap so that you can see. There we go. He's going to move it for you. That's good?
Yep.
Okay.
There's no way through.
I can see that.
Papa really has to laugh.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just,
Making jokes on the piano.
Mozart's a comic.
Our most
Yeah,
versatile
yeah.
pianos.
The guy who wrote scatological letters to
Everything
his
from Scarlatti to
cousin.
Brahms sounds good on
Yeah.
this. So I'll demonstrate.
Could you say that again?
I
For
said everything from Scarlatti to Brahms sounds good on this piano.
what is this piano?
The Fritz.
This is Johann Fritz, who came to the fore around 1810 and joined Conrad Graf and Nanette Streicher as one of the premier makers. And most of his pianos are wildly decorated with bronze, golden bronze decorations on the legs, and he had legs on his pianos that looked like captured Moors and all this sort of thing. This is a plainer one. This was built in Burgundy and came to us from its first owner in San Francisco, who eventually sold it. And we snapped it up in one day when we heard about it, because it is so rare to find his pianos on this continent and not have to ship them from Burgundy.
It's an original or a copy?
This is a copy
Yeah.
of the Fritz. And you'll notice the case has European finish on it, which is a different type of rubbed finish. And what is the wood on that case, Tamara?
I think it's walnut.
I think it's walnut. Yeah, I think it is too. Book-matched walnut. So you're going to start with some
I will
Scarlatti?
start with some Scarlatti, just to show.
Now, it seems strange maybe to be playing Scarlatti on an 1814 piano, but Scarlatti kept having rebirths. And when they came back and some of it was published, it became the absolute rage. And that happened in about 1808, 1806 in Vienna. And so people were really playing Scarlatti, and it continued on. Clara Schumann and Brahms both programmed Scarlatti on their programs. We don't know what sonatas they are because they always just called it caprice. Caprice, that was the romantic word for Scarlatti sonata. So here's a romantic caprice. Scarlatti. You can see why the Viennese would have loved playing Scarlatti on piano like this. For many years, Scarlatti was the province of harpsichordists.
Yeah, that's it.
But research now shows that Scarlatti, when he was in Italy, came in contact with Cristofori pianos, the inventor of the piano in northern Italy. And when he went to Portugal and then to Spain, he ordered up Cristofori type of pianos for the court. And they had a number of them. So he was playing both on early piano and much earlier than this, a century earlier than this, and harpsichord at the same time with the instruments. So then it became popular in England because one Englishman met him, took some of his music back to England and started the English Scarlatti craze, and there it was played on instruments like the one you heard over here. And then it happened in Vienna, and eventually Karl Czerny published a whole bunch of his sonatas, and that's what the romantics like Clara Schumann and Brahms played from. And Brahms particularly loved Scarlatti, and he acquired a copy of Scarlatti's original publication without a title page, which gave him a lot of fun trying to figure out where did it come from, because they didn't know much about Scarlatti in those days. And then he got Czerny's edition, and he had his own manuscripts, and he went through them and marked in Czerny's editions the places where Czerny got it wrong.
Okay, we'll move on to Beethoven now.
Do you want to say anything about the pedals before you start using
I have
them?
a damper pedal, and I have a mute, again, a piece of cloth that slides between the hammer and the strings. And I have an Unicorda. You'll see the keyboard move over just like it does on the modern piano, going down from 3, I think this is a true Unicorda, actually goes down to 1 string, from 3 to 2 to 1.
A little louder, Tamara.
Oh, this goes down from 3 to 2 to 1 strings using the Unicorda.
So it is a true Unicorda pedal. On a modern piano, it goes from 3 to 2. But this you can do 3, 2, or 1.
So,
Depending on how deeply you press the pedal.
Yes, exactly.
exactly.
You have a question there?
Yeah, what about the Janissary pedal?
Oh, what about the Janissary pedal? It's not hooked up.
Yeah, we had to, we went to hook it up. Maybe we can, if we take a break, maybe we can still do that. I don't know. It's right next to one of the soft pedals, and it's extremely easy to make a mistake and hit the Janissary stop when you need to hit the soft pedal.
It is not the same.
It's not quite, it's great for the Turkish rondo, but you really don't want it in the middle of a Siciliano or something.
But that Turkish pedal on that piano has a roll of parchment that comes down on the string and creates what I call a sort of kazoo effect on the buzzing strings. And then it also has bells, and our piano doesn't have it, but a lot of them had mallets underneath it, hit the bottom of the soundboard to make the drum sound. So you could get a full Turkish Janissary band going at your fingertips.
We use that basically for one piece, or other battle pieces.
There were lots of pieces, lots of really cheap music written just for that effect. And of course the Austrians had defeated the Turks, so they just rejoiced in having controlled the Turks at their fingertips, just like they made pillars on their palaces that were Turks with their hands bound behind them. Or you had Mozart writing a Turkish opera. You see, so Turkish went from being a dire enemy to being a craze. That's what Viennese do to problems. It is really, after living there, I learned that. That's what you do with problems. It's a good life skill.
Okay, I'm going to play some of Beethoven's Opus 126 bagatelles, 1 or 2 or maybe 3.
like what?
I like Beethoven on this piano.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But
This is our middle Beethoven period piano.
Yes.
And it's got the classical clarity and
Yeah.
some romantic colorations that come in. It's right on the cusp.
yes.
I just want to play a teeny bit of Schubert.
Question back here.
Yes.
So on the third bagatelle, I couldn't see what you're doing with your feet. Did you have one of the pedals
I was using the moderator.
on the moderator pedal the whole way
yeah,
through?
I was,
Okay,
yeah,
that's very
I
cool.
used both of them. I mean, not at the same time, but
Yeah.
I'd like to use them both at the same time, but.
But I definitely first I like it on a harpsichord.
Okay, I'll play a
You
little bit of
prefer it on a
Schubert, 'cause this is such a
harpsichord?
wonderful
Yeah.
Schubert
Yeah.
instrument and piece you all know very well, so it'd be nice to hear it on a modern period. I won't play the whole thing, just a little bit. Too bad we don't have the stop on here.
I would
Schubert.
dance to that last piece.
Hmm?
I would dance to that last
Use the absolute
piece.
highest note on the
You did?
piano.
I would. Uh-huh.
Oh,
You dance to it.
it
I
may.
would dance to it.
Yeah.
Yes.
It
Yes,
does.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It moves the
I'm not
whole
sure
body.
exactly where that
I'd
would
love
be.
to dance with you.
Thank you.
What is the top?
Ah,
It is
my
out.
God.
I dance with this guy now.
Yes.
That's so
I don't dance anymore.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I'm just so, I'm
She's just
blown away by it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you talk about the expansion of the compass, of the keyboard compass from instrument to instrument, and how, is that a 6-octave instrument at this point?
This
or-
is 6 octaves,
Yeah.
yes. George, you wanna talk about that? About the
Well,
development of the compass?
I have to come back to Mr. Southwell again, or Southwell, because he invented the first square piano that had 5.5 octaves. And it lists in his obituary that he was the inventor of the piano with the additional keys. They called it the additional keys. And it went from F to F, went on up to C on the top. And he did this very simply, without growing the size of the piano, by sliding that action under the soundboard for those top keys. And that's what is on this. These top keys are underneath the soundboard. And they strike up through a little hole in the back of the soundboard that doesn't compromise the sound at all. And they don't have dampers on them. So the very top keys are really wonderful. They're crystalline without the dampers. And people just absolutely fell in love with them. And everybody started using his patent, his invention.
Okay, so is this no longer the straight string? Or is
No,
it-
it's still straight strum.
It's still straight
Mhm.
string.
The strings are a combination of brass on the lower strings, so that you get the biblical resounding brass you heard dig in down there, and then a soft steel, not overly soft, but softer than modern steel strings would be. The tension is nowhere near as great on them, which is why they can have all wooden frames. That still has no bracing in it. And the one that we'll go to next, that's in back of where Johann and her friend were sitting. Also, if you look in there, you don't see any bracing in that one, do you? Yeah, that's straight. So, and that's the next one we're going to.
So did Beethoven play on and compose for this piano? This time?
Not a Fritz, probably more, he had Broadwoods, and what else did he have?
Well, Beethoven tried a lot of pianos. The Erard firm gave him an Erard piano in the first decade of the 19th century. And from what we can gather, he beat the hell out of it. And he kept having the net striker come in to see if she could do anything with this instrument. Imagine being called in to help out on your competitor's piano. But that's how they became close. And he played on striker pianos for many years. But in the latter part of his life, Conrad Graf, who we see up there second from the left, he gave Beethoven a piano. And Beethoven by that time was pretty much deaf. And he had various ear horns fastened to the soundboard and all sorts of things to try to be able to hear the piano. He even had him build one with 4 strings per note, thinking they'd be louder. And of course, all that did was dissipate the attack of the hammer, and it made the piano softer. So he tried all sorts of things, and his pianos, by the words of his visitors, were oftentimes a jumbled mess of piano strings that have come broken and curling up down at the end of the piano. The poor guy could not hear it. So when Broadwood sent him an English piano, which was a louder piano, and it was signed by all the important musicians in London, and they sent it to him, he said he loved this piano. It was such an honor. Well, what was the honor was that the Austrian government waived the import duties for him. And he was highly honored that the government would do that. But he was stone deaf by then, and he never heard that piano. And people say this is the Beethoven piano, the Broadwood. You could play Beethoven on a Broadwood. We have a Broadwood here that's not in tune, but we do play Beethoven on that Broadwood. But yeah, Beethoven's Broadwood, which survives and has been restored and has been recorded on now, was a piano that, unfortunately, the man never heard. He heard these things in his head. Fortunately. What a wonderful imagination he had in his brain. But those pieces that you were playing, Opus 126, he's deaf by then. He never heard those pieces that you just heard. Yeah. Okay, so now we're over to Nanette Stryker's mature grand piano. This was built by Rodney Regier, the same person who built the little vaulter here. And wait a minute, no, you're not on the net, you're on the Grafendorfer. Are we all going to go out in the hall at some point and hear the Nanette Stryker out there?
Maybe when we're done in here.
We have a piano in the entryway that we want you to hear, which is the Nanette Stryker. This is Rod Regier's combination of Conrad Graf models. He looked at 3 of them and 2 Bösendorfer. So this is the Grafendorfer. And it's similar to the type of piano that Chopin made his debut on in Vienna in 1829, and that he came back and played on in 1830 and through 1831 before he went to Paris. So this is the early Chopin piano. It's a piano like the Schumanns had, because they had a Graf piano, and Brahms grew up on a piano. Well, he didn't grow up, but early on the Schumanns gave him their Graf piano, so he had that too. Yeah.
What would you play Schubert on?
I will play some Schumann on that. On this
Schumann,
piano.
yeah,
Yes.
but what about Schubert?
Well,
That's a wonderful Schubert piano as well.
it works with Schubert as well,
Mhm.
but
On the Graf.
yeah,
Grafendorfer, everything from Beethoven through some Brahms.
some Brahms. Yeah, maybe you can play a little bit of Brahms on it. But the Fritz that you heard and the Streicher out in the hall, they're the best Schubert pianos. They're very different instruments. You can catch two different sides of Schubert on those instruments. You choose your repertoire by the piano you're playing.
Okay, well, since I've already played Beethoven and Schubert on the Fritz, I think I will play some Chopin on this piano, which is 1930, circa 1930 replica. Well, it's not really a replica because Rod put together
Right.
everything he liked about the pianos of this period. So it is an original, but it's channeling the sounds.
And he corrected everything he didn't like about the pianos that made them difficult to maintain and keep their stability.
Okay, I'll play you a little bit of the Chopin Barcarolle. We'll see how far I get.
walking around, take a closer look at the cabinet on that piano. Again, I have to laud Rod Regier's cabinet work. It is book-matched flame mahogany. And it's hard to see without some light on it. But it is like the flame from the near down to the where it goes into the roots. And we were surprised when we put this on a stage with lights on it because it turned gold. It has gold highlights in it in the wood that it brings out. Otherwise, it looks reddish brown, but gold it turned into. Barb, you have a question?
Yeah, do you want to mention tuning?
Tuning.
Oh, I had that question too. Temperament.
Temperament. Yeah.
Tuning on that, I think, is, what did he put that at?
We use almost equal. Almost.
It's about 4A equals 435 on the later ones.
Oh,
This
pitch.
is A 420 on this, so not to distress.
Are you asking about pitch or
But what about the temperament?
Oh, I'm
And the
thinking-
temperaments are what Todd Loomis calls almost equal,
Yeah.
because that allows the modulations to be done more smoothly. I kind of like for Beethoven to be less than almost equal, because then when you wander into all these foreign keys in the development section of the Beethoven sonata, you're feeling the tension because the tuning isn't right. And you're yearning for to get back on more solid grounds, which you get at the recapitulation. So you not only get the return of the opening theme and the return of the opening key, but the returning of the working temperament. And I think Beethoven, with his modulations, plays around with this a bit. We haven't run experiments.
You probably know Ross Duffin, don't you?
Pardon me?
Ross Duffin, you probably know him.
Who is it?
Duffin, that's his name, right, Johann? Duffin, the guy who
Oh,
wrote
Ross
the book,
Duffin.
Why Equal Temperament is Ruining Music? Or
Oh,
something?
yes,
Oh,
yes,
yes.
yes, yes,
So
Yeah.
I think
all
you would
the
agree with
ones,
what you just said.
yeah,
about Beethoven.
yeah, yeah.
So all the keyboards we've heard today, are they tuned in a similar manner?
Ask the tuners. Where is,
He's
No.
not here, is he?
well, Todd's not here, but
Yeah. The clavichord is essentially a Bach Barnes, which is very.
you could take your mask off when you're speaking.
Thank you. It's a Bach, it's called a Bach Barnes. It was set up and adjusted to favor, how do you say, bias it for the keys that Bach played in more often, which is still pretty close to Volati as far as that goes. So it's a.
So if you know the circle of fifths, it's the bottom of the circle of fifths that gets hokey a bit with.
It's not very extreme, and it works for all the well-tempered fine.
The Bach well-tempered clavier goes through, the preludes and fugues go through all the different keys. And it's not that you retune it for each piece. You keep a similar tuning. So some of those keys are more tense than others that he's playing. And some of the modulations are more tense than others. Yes, please help.
So I'll play next something a little more intimate, also by Chopin, one of his most famous mazurkas, which just FYI was the theme song for Ingmar Bergman's film Cries and Whispers. I know. Opus 17.
Oh, we need
Been
more
here
water.
before, anyway.
Maybe out of the refrigerator. It's already cold. What can you tell us about mazurkas? How do people, a lot of pianists nowadays play that piece?
It's
With the left hand equal?
the national Polish dance.
Yes.
Poland.
Can you demonstrate how a lot of pianists play it who don't know about mazurkas? You hear what's been lost.
The hiccups.
It's a Viennese waltz now. And the Poles would hate that.
So we delay the third beat a little bit in the mazurka, and not
But the
always,
piece
you know, not
before-
every single bar, but
Sounded as if it was a Van Gogh painting.
Oh, my goodness.
what's that?
She says the piece before that sounded to her as if it was a Van Gogh painting.
Oh, which one? Which was?
Boy, that's a high compliment. Thank you, Dorothy.
The mazurka or the big piece?
The long piece?
I
Was
see
that the-
pictures when I hear music.
She sees pictures when she hears music.
And when I play music,
So I'll try
I
something
see
a little
some
bit,
pictures
somebody
or
asked
some
about,
colours.
do you think Dorothy asked about Schumann? This is also
I have
been
another
together
friend
for
that
me.
does the same thing.
I'll play a little bit of the
It does the
beginning
same
of the
thing for her.
Faschingschaft.
We've got to talk
Just
someday.
to show you how great she was.
So imagine you're at the salon at the Schumann's house. Yes, there you are.
So, George,
Yes.
when did they stop calling them forte pianos? Was that when they got so forte, they just called them piano?
Right. So
Exactly.
forte, they called them piano.
They should have
right?
called it
Right.
forte.
Um,
No, when did they?
The
when did they-
English are calling these pianofortes.
Piano.
Pianoforte comes from the English tradition. Fortepiano comes from the Viennese tradition. But by mid-century, pianoforte had taken over.
And when did they just drop the forte and call it a piano, even though it's got a huge range?
I don't know the answer to that. When the misnomer
Should be the other way
started.
around. They should call
Yeah,
it
they should have called it the forte.
Yes.
Yes, you're right.
So aren't I a lucky guy to have my own Clara Schumann?
Yes.
Listen to this. Yes, yes. We have one more piano to go, and it's right on time at 4:13. That's going to give us 15 minutes for this last piano, and then these pianos are meant to be played. So you may go around on the ones that are in tune and try playing them. You'll find that there are different pitch levels, which is sort of Ivesan when you start to get more
I'll do
than
it
one
once.
pitch level.
I'll do it at once, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But
I'll
when
play
we do
chopsticks.
classes for kids, it doesn't bother them at all. They just go to their favorite piano and play.
Blessed
We won't
cacophony.
Hmm?
I said it's blessed cacophony. I'm looking for my little thing that I put on the stool.
So I'll tell you a little bit about that piano. Tamara, maybe you could lower the...
You're not, but this will do.
Okay.
This will help.
What this will do?
Could you lower the lid on the Fritz, Tamara?
Yes.
So, and if you want to swing your chairs around a little bit to face it, you'll see a picture sitting on the piano. And that is a picture of the Honorable Miles C. Moore, whose piano this was. And he was the last territorial governor of Washington. And he had a mansion that still exists out in Walla Walla. He was a trader, and trader in the sense of trading goods, and supplied the trappers and the mountain men, and hauled the stuff up on his own back with his own mules up into the mountains to get established. He created a very good trade business, and then he married the banker's daughter, and eventually became president of the bank out in Walla Walla. So he was a very prominent citizen, and his house was the governor's mansion, because he never came to Olympia. He didn't like to be away from his home. So he had, people all came to him, and they heard this piano in their music room. Well, this is, my piano movers tell me this is the heaviest piano that they've ever moved. And as you can imagine, that it went with the house every time the house was sold. And sitting out in the dryness of eastern Washington, the action gradually turned to powder and was absolutely just falling apart. And the last, well, one of the last owners of the house, the last owner before we got the piano, she decided that she was going to have the piano restored. So there, and I was trying to find the names of the people who restored it to put in your program, because they did an amazing job. They took a German Renner action, which is like a Steinway action. Steinway uses Renner actions now. And they retrofitted it, starting from the bottom and working up, changing every part to fit into this case and to play against the strings properly.
So it's no longer a Chickering.
It's no longer a Chickering action. The Chickerings had their own action, and you'd have to have made every single part from hand. It was impossible to do that. The music rack was also missing. And can you flip the music rack up and let them see what it looks like? They didn't do a very good job solving it, because the music rack is what Steinway, you see the S, what Steinway makes to replace the broken racks on their old pianos. Now, Steinway and Chickering were the arch competitors of each other. They hated each other. So, you know, we wonder what goes on at night when we're not around between the rack and the rest of the piano. And this model piano was submitted in 1867, which is the date of this piano. It was submitted to the International Exhibition in Paris. And Steinway sent their latest model. And there was going to be a prize given for the best piano. And the French just, poor Erard, they didn't stand a chance with these Americans coming in. I don't know what Erard got out of that conference, but the French came up with a diplomatic solution. They gave the first prize to to Steinway, but they gave the Legion of Honor to Chickering. And Chickering has a label inside the piano of the Legion of Honor, showing the Legion of Honor that they won. So they both came back and said they won the exhibition, which just heightened the whole tension of the war. And there were cartoons drawn about these forces against each other. Eventually, obviously, Steinway won out, but Chickering for many years was the piano. This is the piano that Amy Beach played on in her younger years. Louis Moreau Gottschalk toured with Chickering's. Edvard Grieg owned a Chickering in Norway. And the Chickering from that exhibition, as I tell you in your packet, was carried by the Chickerings to Italy, to Rome, where Liszt was living. And they gave it to Liszt. And he ran his master classes on that Chickering. And Edvard Grieg, when he visited him there, he performed on the Chickering at Liszt's house. So this is how Chickering wormed its way into the top flight of composers, by giving their pianos away. And Lord knows what the shape would have been of the piano by the time they shipped it home. So you might as well take it overland to Italy and give it to Liszt. So This is a piano that for years I have used to coach the chamber music of Johannes Brahms, and somewhat the solo music, but the chamber music, duos and trios and quartets. And I've made a specialty of learning how Brahms played at his time and how the people around him played. There was no one single way, but none of them were the way we play it now. None of them were the way we play it now. So, for years I did seminars and performance practice at the University of Washington. I also did this at Boston University one time. And Tekla Cunningham, those of you who are Seattleites, she and I have been working on the violin duos. She's absolutely a closet Brahmsian, and she started performing them around, and she and her pianist did a residency here for several days, and we went through the evidence and worked with them. So if you have any friends that want to coach Brahms with me, I'm retired now and have time to do it. And I'm glad to get those juices going again. Tamara will play some Brahms for you. The thing about Brahms is that he loved good basses.
Thank you.
Very strong basses. And in fact, somebody who heard him play took her score home and marked the places where she wrote good basses, good basses, good basses, or she circled notes, or places where she pushed forward, she wrote, go it. She was an English girl.
Go it.
Tennis player, an English girl, pianist, a student of Clara Schumann. And she marked her score all up, and we have this score in England, and I have copied out all of the entries that she made for how Brahms played the C minor piano trio, with Joachim as violinist and Hausmann as cellist. And Clara Schumann was turning pages. So you can imagine the energy in that room. And this was a brand new piece, and from her descriptions, we learned how Brahms played. Not forcing the sound, as so many pianists do, but letting the weight come down. She said at the big chords, you could see him lift his little arms and drop them down as if to say, I mean that. And I've coached pianists. Sometimes it takes a half hour or more to get them relaxed enough to play that. And then we start going on to getting that sort of thing into the fingertips for melodies, into the basses of when they're playing, and they have a new piano technique from Brahms.
Question about that. I've heard that said about Beethoven too, exactly what you just said.
I wouldn't be surprised because, if you push a forte piano, it does nothing. It does not like a forte piano. But if you play it with weight and tone to get the good tone out, it loves it. It loves it. It likes to be taken in command, but not hit. I mean, who wants to be hit? We all want to be embraced, right? These are very human instruments. So Tamara's going to play for you some things on the governor's Chickering, and the woman who had it restored decided eventually to downsize, sell the mansion, and she didn't have room for this and her other piano. So she sent it to Seattle to be sold, and it sat in a showroom window. And we were driving down, 6th Avenue in Seattle, and I said, stop! And she slammed on her brakes, and there was the piano in the window. We did a U-turn and came back and parked and went in and fell in love with this instrument. And so we actually sold a Steinway to buy this instrument.
Don't tell Steinway that.
Don't tell Steinway that. No. And the pianist, the violinists hearing this as a piano get a different tone. The cellists get a different joie de vivre in their playing, hearing this piano. And it really, these instruments teach you, if you're sensitive, they teach you what they like. And they change the way you play the piano. And everything you're hearing Tamara doing, they're all different manners of playing the piano. She told you about the English versus the Viennese. This is in the English tradition. We've skipped over the Romantic period pianos. Behind you there is our newest edition, which is a Parisian Erard over on the right side. And over on the left side, the next piano down after the Broadwood is a London Erard. And then further down we have 1870s Viennese air bar, which is still straight strung in with the Viennese action. So that goes up into the 1880s. Broadwood was making straight strung pianos into the 1890s. We have one in Maine from 1895, straight strung and colorful. Okay, we better let Tamara go on and play.
Okay, first off, I'm going to play a short intermezzo that I know quite well, and then I'm going to play a little bit of the very famous A major intermezzo, which I don't know very well, but I just want to read through it a little bit.
What is the second piece?
The famous A major intermezzo from
Oh, yes.
118, because it just sounds so gorgeous on this piano.
This is what composer?
This is Brahms.
Brahms.
I don't know why I don't learn it better.
And
I should really do that.
listen for the good basses. It gets rid of right-handed pianists. You know how many pianists play, you hear mainly the right hand and a little diddling in the accompaniment. Brahms is full-bodied in both hands. one of Clara Schumann's students who heard Brahms play his late set of keyboard pieces, the Opus 116 through 119, said he sat there as if improvising. And I think you caught the improvisatory nature of this piece. Unlike what your piano teachers now tell you, loud meant faster and soft meant slower. And hairpins didn't just change the dynamics, they changed the tempo. And they could either get faster if it was more excited, or they could get broader if you wanted that. But you had to do something on the hairpins. If you kept it metronomic, you weren't feeling the improvisation. Those are just two very simple rules that change the way one plays Brahms from what you usually hear nowadays.
But you know,
That was lovely,
That
Tamara.
was amazing.
That was gorgeous.
It's a great
So
piece.
this is just a few bars.
if
of
one
this
is
instrument, so
German
just so
and
you can
has
hear it.
studied all the German folk songs,
Yes.
the Brahms has incorporated many a theme from the German folk songs,
I know.
which come right out.
We should talk about that.
It's amazing.
I wrote an article on Brahms and I wrote an article on Brahms and folk songs. Yes.
Maybe one of you can play it.
Two other things about playing Brahms. Brahms, like harpsichordists, rolled chords, even when they were not marked to roll. And how many of you pianists have had teachers say, no, limping, you're getting your left hand ahead of your right, keep the hands together. Brahms limped. That was part of the expressivity of Brahms and all the other romantics. You hear on the early recordings that they use that to lead up to the chord on the top rather than just chumping them all at once.
So to end with, I'm going to play a few very, very short pieces by Grieg.
Good. Good.
First we'll have Solitary Wanderer, and then Norwegian Melody, and then The Butterfly.
Is that the last piece, Tamara? Have we worked her enough?
I tried a little bit on the it's Erard, maybe. Let's do a little nocturne on this Erard, and then we'll call it quits.
Did that get tuned?
No, but it's not so bad.
It's not bad. try out the pianos, and I'll sit here for your Ask the Professor.
I'm gonna
If you've got
some
questions.
refreshments out.
Oh, we have an announcement to make. If you would like to join the Western Early Keyboard Association, which is what brought you this program,
You want some help?
there's a form here for that.